Not setting boundaries with a spouse is a potential for disaster. I've seen it story after story. But imagine if you knew the secret to setting up everything right from the start. The difference between a relationship that drains you and one that fills your heart. You want to know how? Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Mindful Muslimah Speaks podcast, a safe space to learn and grow into the best version of yourself that you're always meant to be. I'm your host, Mindful Muslimah, a mom of 5, big sister to the community, and a licensed educator with 25 plus years and supporting tens of thousands of Muslim women worldwide. Now, I'm excited to share a ton of solutions to your problems on love, relationships, life balance, reconnecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, getting back on track, and more. So grab a cup of coffee and close out those tabs. These next 20 to 30 minutes are all about you. Let's get started. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the podcast. If you are a new listener, welcome to your new family. We're so excited you stopped by. And if you're an old-time listener, it's good to have you back, friend. What we're going to be doing today is talking about something that is so easy to do wrong and so easy to do right if we only knew. And I can't wait. Before I do, I want to give one big shout out. Shout out to Hannah and Nishita, who've been pining away, working really hard with all the mentors in our program. And I want to give a shout out to all the new mentees that have just piled in. And I want to say, like, the work you're about to do, it is life-changing. I did it myself back then. I'm so excited to see your transformation. Last one I want to say is I had a couple sisters that have been DMing me on Instagram. It's really good to be with you. Sarah, thank you so much. I am so touched that it helped. And the last one is, I think it was Rachel. I am so proud of the work that you've done and what you've shared. So alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair. As we're starting the podcast, I want to know there is a ton that we're going to cover today, but I want to start with a powerful quote. And it is a quote from Oscar Wilde that says, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." Because the truth is, ladies, the secret to finding him is to loving yourself first. We'll get more into that. But defining your values early on really helps you protect your heart. That's the first one I want to throw out here. And align them with what you both share. So it builds this foundation of mutual respect and ensures when you move forward, it's clear. Because one of the biggest problems I have when I talk to women is that they realize way too late they haven't established what they wanted with the guy front up. There's a lot of things they didn't talk about. There's a lot of things that they forgot to mention. And because of that, there's so many marital problems later. So here's one example. There was one sister, Fatima, and at a family gathering, she had met somebody that like a family member put her with in that big space, right? And he seemed to really see her in a way that felt really rare. But there's this thing that took a turn. In all her excitement, she put some of her values that she wanted to talk about on the back burner. They got into other stuff. And she's like, it's fine. He'll come to understand me later. Like, we'll figure that out, right? I see that a lot, right? And months and months, she finds herself like making little changes for him. Going to things she doesn't really want to go to, doing things she doesn't really want to do. And with each step further from who she really was. And one night she looks in the mirror and she has this moment of realization. The person staring back at her is practically a stranger. She'd lost touch with the things that made her feel who she was, what she loved, what her boundaries and her guidelines were, and the things that mattered most. And it wasn't just about the fact that she realized she had to call it off with him because he wasn't what she needed him to be for the marriage. It was about the heartbreak of also losing herself and her own values at the center. Compromising is normal, guys. Sacrificing your true self, that is like a one-way ticket to losing something you'll never get back. If you're feeling the pressure to change who you are and align with that person to make it work, it's not a good sign, right? You deserve a relationship where you're loved for the real you, values and all. If you have to constantly compromise, it's a sign. But there was one sister that I had coached for about 2 months before she went into this meeting. And her name is Aisha. She said I could share, right? And she did something really smart instead, which I want to share you of what I would suggest you to do. She bravely wanted to have this Islamic home. She said, I want a Muslim guy. I see too many of my friends like not having that, and it's not clear. What can I do to make sure it's clear that I want ABC? So we talked about it, right? And we talked about, I said, you have to be dead up front in this next meeting with him. And she's like, I don't want to run him away. And I was like, please run him away. Please run him away if he's not right. Why are you afraid of running him away? Well, I like him. And I said, but listen, if he's not going to be that guy for you, what are you going to do? what are you gonna do? She's like, I know. I said, look, put your big girl boots on, let's go. So she went there and she said, one of the things that's really important to me is this life rooted in faith. I want to have a home where we pray together. I don't want you to be in one room and I'm in the other. And she said to me, the guy listened and he was like, uh-huh, mm-hmm. And he was like, I want that too. Like, I'm cool with that. Like, that's good. And then she started to get into family expectations, which is the other thing her and I spoke about. And I said, you got to get granular on what good looks like. Because don't just be like, this is where women get, I don't want to say get salty, right? They're just like, oh, he never helps me in the house. I'm like, did you tell him that in the sit down that you expect him? She's like, no. So I'm like, you can't do that, right? So she was really, really specific. She said, I believe marriage is a partnership where we have to support each other's growth. So yes, I want to like take care of the house. I want to take care of the kids. And I want, you know, you're going to work and everything's going to be great. But I need you to support my goals. I need to also feel like I'm not just parenting kids while you go off and, you know, take care of yourself. And he was like, okay. But you could tell he didn't understand what that meant. And so she had a really awesome comeback that we talked about. And she said to him, well, if I say we have to help each other with the kids, what do you think that looks like? What does a typical day look like to you if I say that? And he started saying it. And it was not what she meant. So it was perfect. Because then she was like, no. What I really mean is this. And he was like, oh, so you want me to, she's like, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, that's not a problem. She's like, are you sure though? Because this is like a super important thing. And she said, let me tell you why. And then they talked for a bit about it, and it was great. But do you see how she did that? When she knew he was unsure, she said, wait a minute. Based on what I said, like, what do you think a typical day married would look like? And when he said it, he was wrong. So that just made it that much more clear. So clarity is really important. And that's a great way to find it. All right, this one is important, the next one, because we just talked about core beliefs and how you have to be solid on those. But I'm going to talk to you about something else, which is communicating assertively, like not feeling bad about saying things, which I think a lot of like introvert sisters struggle with. And I really wanted to like help them out with this one. Or if you're just struggling like conveying your wants to somebody else, you're not used to doing that, you struggle with that all your life type of thing. Okay, but before I do, I want to say this. I have something super special coming up in the coming months. I'm not quite sure yet. I haven't released it in about 2 years because the last time I did it was really, really big. Then we moved on to other stuff. But I'm going to be doing another huge event about workshops, not workshops, interviews and how to conduct them. Like, I'm going to model for you. Like, let's say there's 2 people in front of each other. Like, this is how you do it. Last time I did that, you guys absolutely loved that. We didn't do it for about 2 years. So inshallah ta'ala, we're bringing it back. We're going to have probably like limited seats. And we're going to make sure that because we really want to like focus on the sisters that are there and just get really, really excited about that. That's coming up in the next coming months. But what I want to talk about in this one is we just talked about core beliefs. Let's talk about how to communicate assertively because that's really, really important. So it's really, really important that I had this story of a sister and it was not a good story. So I'm going to tell you some good stories and some not so good stories. This first sister, her name Medium, she met this guy. I'm not going to say his name because Medium told me I could share. I don't know the guy. Right from the start, there was this undeniable spark, right? She really wanted to make a good impression. And she didn't want to like come off as too strict or uptight. So she kind of joked about things that she wasn't comfortable with. She let things go so she didn't seem like whatever to him. And she kept trying to like show him the fun side of her. But every time she did this, a tiny piece of her self-confidence was chipped away because she was ignoring the discomfort and like the connection just kind of kept going, but it felt slightly off. Let's just say she wasn't being herself. And one night he just crossed the line and he sent her a message and she was just like, whoa, like I have limits, but like I need to like be better on these limits. And at first she kind of shrugged it off. And then she was like, it's not okay with me to like talk that way. We're not going to talk like that. And he's like, I thought you were fine with it. And like, what are you talking about? You made it like, you never acted like you weren't like okay with this stuff. And that's when it hit her. She realized that like she didn't assertively share her boundaries enough. So for women who struggle with opening up your mouth, like really, really being clear, feeling, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings and all that stuff. It's really, really important that you really understand not doing that will get a guy to like dive into other boundaries. And then you're going to end up doing things that you feel guilty about, that you feel bad about. And it's not a good thing. It'll get you to obviously do sins that you didn't want to do, But then after that, if you actually stay married, you're going to live this lie with this guy that, like, it's not even who you are. It's not even what you want. So that first sister came to me in a consultation call. We didn't work together, right? So then the next sister, I want to give you this example, this other sister, her name is Henna, and she had this guy, and she was trying to, obviously, she said, you know, she came to me, she was very, very like an introvert. She said, I want him to know from the beginning, like, I don't want to do anything that's haram. Like, I don't want to do anything wrong. And I find, like, in the past, I don't open up. I don't, like, tell guys. So they assume because I don't say anything that I'm good to go. Like, I'm just going to do these things. And she's like, then it gets awkward. And she's like, I feel so guilty to Allah. And she's like, I really don't want to do those things. I don't want to be that person, but that's who I keep being. How could I be, alhamdulillah, like the person I want to be Islamically? So we met, you know, many times on the phone, and we talked over, I think, Zoom, and we did these calls. And I modeled for her, and we modeled together, and we practiced till she was comfortable. And let me tell you kind of the conversation she ended up having with the guy. So the conversation was like this. She met with a guy, and she said, she wanted to, like, outline from the beginning. We talked about she needs to outline the type of girl she is and the type of girl she's not. So it's really clear as things get, like, closer with each other in terms of getting to know each other and closer to possibly end up getting married, how to do it right. Now, mind you, I want to say all the things I'm talking about, guys, are in a halal way. I'm not talking about secret meetings. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, halal, like, interviews, right? So anyway, so she wanted to this respectfulness to happen between them. So she got, you know, the guts after we had practice, and she went there and she was like, okay, I just want you to know, like, I'm not going to go anywhere with you alone. I have to be with my mahram. And I just, like, this is what the things she put in her mind, like, I want to make sure these happen, right? So she goes to the guy and she says, look, I really want to get to know you, and I really want to know more about you. Like, I'm so grateful for the way you're open, and, you know, you're trying to stay true to, like, you know, who you are. But I just want to be, like, super clear. I just really want to only meet up when our families are together. And the guy hadn't broken the boundary yet. Like, she was just, like, you know, setting the stage. And she's like, I really, really just want us to not do anything that we regret. And, you know, the guy looked at her and he paused and he was like, I'm going to be honest. Like, no one has ever said that to me before. And he was like, then he basically said, like, I kind of respect that, because if that's who you are, then I know, like, in our marriage, I could trust you, because you're a woman who, like, is not afraid to tell a guy that that's not okay. So she was like, ooh, that actually worked out in her favor. So I was like, yeah. And then, you know, she was telling me that she's like, oh, the next one, I want to explain to him, like, that I don't want to get emotionally attached. I want to keep it kind of like at a professional level, because I'm feeling certain feelings for him. And I feel like if I keep going this way, I might go to my old self and make bad decisions. So I was like, cool. So what do you think you need to do? And so she said, I really need to tell him that I don't want him to just, like, text me and talk to me anytime privately, because I don't feel like that's appropriate. And because, you know, we teach these things in our school, and we had explained to her, like, certain things. It's like, you know, when two are alone, shaitan is a third, right? But you still want to get to know people, right? So she had expressed to him, like, look, I just want to have, like, set times when we meet. And this is something I did, for example, with my own daughter. We had, like, set times where people would meet. We wouldn't just be like, hey, now we're just chatting. Like, this is not it. It was set times so that if we did have to have mahram present and stuff like that. So the point is, she said that dead up to him, and she actually just went and she texted him on the phone to let you know, I want to make sure, blah, blah, blah. So if my dad's got to be around, my mom's got to be around, I just want to do it right. So here she's reiterating it, but she's going, like, a deeper level. She's like, I don't want to just not meet in public or, like, privately. She's like, now let's talk about the phone. Like, let's set some standards for the phone. And that's really hard, because the phone, you're going to think, like, oh, what's the big deal? But that's when the private things get said, in the text on the phone. So I love that about her. This is a girl that was dead shy, did not know how to talk at all. And now she's there, like, hold up, let me tell you this, let me tell you this. Now, mind you, she didn't do it in an aggressive way. So the guy was not thrown off. He was like, I get that. I'm busy too. So you know what? That works for me anyway, because I got this and this with my exams. And she was like, okay. And they just act real chill about it. And that's the thing I want people to know, is the more you make stuff feel awkward, the more awkward it is. You have to not make it feel awkward. Just make it feel like, this is what we do. This is who I am. And it makes so much more sense, and it always works out. The last thing I want to say is, we talked about boundaries. We talked about, like, talking even though you're sheepish, like, how to do it and the importance of it. But what I want people to know is, you have to do this now. You have to establish now exactly what you want people to know about you and who you are and what your boundaries are. Because if you don't, what happens is you end up in a marriage where you get a lot of surprises, right? And the thing that we're going to be doing when we're up and coming in the next couple of months, like I told you, I want you to get excited about, is the fact that we are going to be talking about how to have more of these interviews and taking your questions. And in fact, if you have loved this podcast and you actually like, oh, yeah, I'm actually struggling with that, and you have questions, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to DM me on Instagram something you want me to go deeper on in the podcast about figuring this out with guys and spouses. So love that you're with me this time. Inshallah ta'ala, if you aren't already, subscribe, follow, so you can get more of these tips. And every time they come out, they're coming out once or twice a week. So I want to make sure you don't miss them. And inshallah ta'ala, I cannot wait to see you in the next podcast. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.